Hi, I'm Darren Aitchison. I'm the Director of Innovation and Training at the Restorative Justice Alliance International World Headquarters, just outside of Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. This is a masterclass and Q&A session with me about the school-to-prison pipeline and how we can use restorative practices and acceptance and commitment therapy to combat that. So we have a working title for today. It's how to enhance student achievement and greater cultural diversity without having major conflicts and leaving anyone behind. This is a tall order, but I really think we can get there. And we've actually started to make progress on this. We'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. So increasing achievement and cultural diversity go hand in hand, and improving on both of those fronts has a lot to do with school discipline. So I'm going to be talking about out of our two books today. The first book is written by my mentor, Dr. Ron Clausen, and his wife, Roxanne. It's called Discipline That Restores. That's our primary curriculum that we use in our interventions out in the field. And the second book right behind it is my book, The Mediator, and that's the story of how I came to this intervention. And I'm going to talk about some stories from that book here in just a couple minutes. So we are in a time of tremendous change. Schools are not exempt from this. We are on the cusp of a new era. And humans have a natural tendency to be skeptical of new things because we come from a hunter-gatherer society. We have 1,000-year-old brains. So this story actually represents an old Babylonian proverb about people who lived in the darkness, and then a guy found a way out of the tunnels to go back to the light, and they killed him because they were too scared to change that they lived in darkness for so long. They didn't want to go back to living in the light, even though it was better for them. So this being afraid of new things goes back to our inception, literally thousands and thousands of years. But despite that, we are in a brave new world. And in this brave new world, we have things that we know that work pretty well. We call those an evidence-based practice or a process-based practice. That's kind of the newer term. Then we have things that look pretty good so far. They're emerging, they're new, but they show great promise. And then we have things that we know that don't work very well at all. And then we have things that we know only make things worse. And when I'm talking these categories, I'm talking with regards to behaviors and emotions. And also cognitions as well. So here's one quick example. I promised earlier that we would have a story from a parent. So this is a letter that a parent wrote me literally this week. I transcribed it and put some sound and music to it, but it really speaks for itself. All right, so I love that. So that we call that a life trajectory. So a life trajectory is where you're going in life. So we were able to change this kid's life from a trajectory of likely ending up in jail, incarcerated in prison, to becoming a productive member of society. He just started college this semester. So, and we're actually saving money because it costs less money to go to college than it does to go to prison. A lot of people don't know that. So this is a new day for educators and for students and their families. What I'm going to show you an outline for you today is really a game changer for both sides. So we're talking about greater academic achievement and racial equity. These two things go hand in hand, and they both have a lot to do with student discipline and the way we discipline and the way we talk to our kids. I'm going to make that case for you here as this presentation goes on. So my goals for this web class for you guys, I want you to see your potential, the power that you have to stop bad things from happening before they happen, and to eventually put an end, at least put a good dent in the school to prison pipeline. I want to show you how ACT and restorative justice are primary vessels that we can do those things. And then I want to encourage you to take some action. So why should you listen to me? I'm just another guy on the internet. Well, I have several issues on this stuff published in respectable peer-reviewed journals. So, and that's really important. It's important to get that quantitative evidence. But I want to talk to you today in a more qualitative sense about my experiences of doing this in the classroom. So I'm kind of wearing both hats, but I'm more focused on the experience side. I want to show you rather than just giving you numbers. So my backstory. So I was a teacher for a long time. I taught kids with social emotional trauma, sometimes kids on the spectrum. And I got pretty frustrated pretty fast. So after only a couple of years, I came to some realizations. So I asked myself one day, what do I want to accomplish? And I wanted to teach. Of course, I'm a teacher. That makes sense, right? But I wasn't teaching. I was going through this vicious cycle of sending kids to the office, them getting written up, getting suspensions or detention or reprimand, expulsions in some cases. And then they would come right back to my classroom, and the same process would go over and over again. So it was literally starting to drive me insane. Because what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. I filled out another discipline referral and another, and we weren't getting anywhere. So externally, I saw this system that was totally broken, and that was setting me up to fail, driving me crazy. And inside my mind, I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I'm not doing what I want to do. I'm not teaching anybody. I'm just spinning on a hamster wheel. So I hit a wall. I knew in my heart and in my mind that the punitive disciplines, suspensions, detentions, and the like was not working, but I had no alternative. And then I had the chance to meet a girl named Miracle. So this was when I first started working as an administrator. I was selected to attend Miracle's expulsion hearing very early in the year. And she was up for expulsion because she had beaten the crap out of these three girls simultaneously with apparently no provocation. She just attacked them at random. So I go into the hearing, or on the way to the hearing, and I get stopped by this girl. She was in 6th grade at the time, and she has 2 attorneys with her. These attorneys are from a very well-known law firm here in the United States. So they asked if they could speak to me before the hearing started. So I said sure, much to the aghast of my superiors, but I figured I got to hear them out right. So I take them into the side office, and the lawyers tell me this horrible story of how the last 2 years, this poor girl, her mother had been dying of cancer, and these other 3 girls had been bullying her, telling her that it was her fault her mom was dying of cancer. And then finally, when her mom died, they again said it was her fault, that she had caused her mother to have too much stress, so she died of cancer earlier. So they accused this poor girl of killing her mother over and over and over for 2 years. And then finally one day she couldn't take it anymore, and she beat him up pretty bad. So those lawyers posed a very interesting question to me. Her getting expelled from school, was that justice? I said no, clearly not. Because my staff had missed all this bullying. So I remanded her suspension, all of her suspensions and her expulsion. I expunged them from her record, and I put her back in class where she belonged. Unfortunately, I was in a position where I had the power that I could do that, but not everybody can. But what would have been the chain of events? Mother dies of cancer. You get bullied. You fight back. You defend your mother's honor. Then you get kicked out of school. And the lawyers told me that they thanked me. They said, "You've just stopped this girl from going to prison." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And that's when I first learned about the school to prison pipeline. So at that moment, I was like, I cannot continue on this path any longer. I have basically 2 choices. I can either quit teaching, which is what many teachers do. The average career of a teacher is between 2 and 5 years. Special ed is even shorter than that. Or I had to find another way. So I chose to do the latter, not the former. So I went on a journey of nearly a decade. I looked to any place I could think of that could help me work with these kids with emotional issues. I would talk to anyone who would listen. I talked to experts in education, positive behavior supports, disability studies, academic and formative assessment. I spoke with people, I spoke with neurobiologists, neuroscientists, former enemy combatant interrogators, hostage negotiators from elite law enforcement, from the FBI and some of the other international partners. I talked to experts in behavior analysis, in applied psychology, in psychiatry, in pediatric medicine. And I compiled all this information in this ridiculously long spreadsheet. And as I was doing that, I noticed that there was this gap between neuroscience and behavioral psychology and practices in school. There was all this really cool advanced stuff that we have in neuroscience that's not making its way into schools, at least not yet. But there were three things that I learned from all of my research from my 10-year journey. That there was an expert consensus on punitive discipline. So those detentions, isolations, restraint, reprimand, everybody agrees that not only do they not work, but they make children worse. There's unilateral agreement on. Even people who don't agree on anything agree on this. There's also widespread agreement that the people who use these punishment technologies in schools, these tactics, are not trained in how to use them properly or effectively. So if you talk to anybody who's worth their measure in psychology or psychiatry, they will tell you that the worst thing you can do to make behaviors better is intermittent or inconsistent punishment. And that's exactly what we have in schools. The other thing that I found was that we can get clinical results in a school. Those results we typically get in a clinic with those mental health patients. We can use the same techniques, a little bit of modification, but we can do it in a school setting. And that forced me on a new path, which is where I'm here today. So again, after those 10 years or so, I discovered the hard way that there was a way to help these kids with emotional issues. And I found the best that neuroscience and behavioral psychology has to offer. And our best effort is acceptance and commitment therapy with restorative justice. So if you've been struggling, and I know you are because you wouldn't come to me if you're not, this is the reason why you're probably struggling. So why do I have a picture of a castle here? Because this castle was built in the Dark Ages, in the Middle Ages. Most of the discipline codes in schools are just as old. They've been around since the Dark Ages. So it's time to bring schools out of the Dark Ages and into a new era of using things that work. So this is the way we've been doing things for the past 200 or so years. Excuse me, but the thing is you've been told a very terrible lie. That lie is if you do a harsh tactic, it makes someone behave. So not only is that not true, the opposite is true. It doesn't make them behave, it often makes their behavior worse. It wastes thousands of hours of instructional time and billions of tax dollars. It makes some of our best and brightest teachers quit, again, within that 2 to 5 year range. It is a system that is racist and ableist. And you can take all these problems and do away with them in about 2 years, according to our research. If everybody works together and you're doing it the way you're supposed to. So I'm going to show you an easier and cheaper solution here in just a couple minutes. So this is the old way. This is what most schools in America are still doing right now. So you have the classroom here at the bottom. The kids in the classroom, it could be a special ed or gen ed classroom, doesn't matter. Then you have an outside person, which could be a social worker, assistant principal, school psychologist. And you might have an in-school intervention or suspension room. And the kid bounces around between these three areas. And then the administrator is trying to juggle them in the middle. So in many schools that I've seen, and my research bears this out, this is what happens. You tend to have a very small population of kids that are eating up all of your resources. So the classroom teacher can't deal with them. So she or he sends them out to the extra person. So that extra person is taken away from crucial duties. So if they're tying up the social worker or the psychologist or the special ed teacher, that means kids are not meeting their IEP minutes, which is a legal and a moral problem. But even worse, they take away time of the administrator from being an instructional leader. And we know that the administrator is the single most important person in a school with regards to instruction. So when their time is eaten up by these kids with discipline problems, it damages the learning of everyone in the school. And hence we have kids holding their school hostage. Literally. So this is the new way. So we have the classroom teacher again, but we're giving them better strategies. Our curriculum is called Discipline That Restores. It is highly effective. It is an easy to manage system. And it is restorative instead of punitive in nature. And that extra person is a trained mediator, a trained interventionist. That person is an expert in conflict resolution and will get that kid on track without kicking him out of school or kicking him out of class. And there's the other person on the other side there is called the thinkery. So the thinkery is like an in-school suspension, but therapeutic. So the kid just goes there when they need to calm down and to get ready for mediation. That's the only purpose of the thinkery. It's not a punishment. It's not a warehouse for the bad kids. And at the center of all this action, we have the behavior activist, the person trained in acceptance and commitment therapy. They work with these three people. They're the glue that holds everything together. And then the administrator has the freedom to supervise and do their other duties as well. So the key here is that in this system, the kid's going to get kicked out of school eventually, either for a week, a day, a year, and he's never going to be held accountable for his actions. If he can just endure that punishment, that's all he needs to do. This system is exactly the opposite. When he sits down for mediation, has to talk out his problems, that does hold him accountable. And we're able to manage him in school. So he's not kicked out of school. He doesn't not finish high school. He doesn't end up on the streets. He doesn't get arrested. And therefore we've mediated the school to prison pipeline. So you can accomplish this in 2 to 3 years' time with some help. You can see much quicker than I did because there's a playbook now. I never had one. So this is my very first published study from 2018. This is from the Internet Journal of Restorative Justice. And I realize that some of you may have never seen a graph like this before, but I'll just show you my cursor here. So this here is the baseline. These are the number of discipline referrals per month that these kids had. So I took the 3 worst kids in this district. So this kid had between 9 and 14 referrals per month, which is quite a bit. Kid number 2 was between 10 and 20, and then between 10 and 15 for kid number 3. So just after implementing Discipline That Restores and mediations, you can see we immediately dropped these down to near 0 for all 3 kids once we started our intervention. We did follow up 6 months later, and the kids were still doing very well. Ryan did too. I didn't have the newest graph, which has more data points on it. So we were able to get these 3 worst kids in the whole school under control in about 20 school days. And we did not do it by focusing on the kids. We did it by focusing on the teachers. We gave the teachers better tools, and then the teachers rose to the occasion. Let's fast forward a couple years later. This is from a study that's going to be coming out here pretty soon. So don't let all these funky blue lines fool you. This is a standard acceleration chart. It measures acceleration and deceleration of behavior, but don't worry about that. Just look at the same lines on the other side here. So right here, this is where we started. This is our decrease, and this is for the entire school. We used ACT with 1 kid, and then we used pro-social behavior for the rest of the kids in the whole school. So you can see for school A, we had a 57% decrease, a 47% decrease, and a 60% decrease in these 3 schools, and the number of violent incidents per day. And we did that in about 30 or 40 school days. So this doesn't take a long time to take effect when you do it right, when you do it well. So any school can do this. All it takes is a change in your mindset and begin learning and applying DTR and ACT. And I've seen this play out over and over. I've seen it happen here in the States and in Canada, in Germany, in Great Britain, in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia. And we're even starting to make some inroads down in South Africa. I've seen this work unilaterally because we all have the same brains. We all have the same body chemistry. We all have the same hearts and minds. So there's no reason it can't work for you as well. So what is this process? Well, step one is to stop the bleeding. That means we stop using the things that don't work. Or talk about those things that we know that make kids worse. So we stop using detentions, suspensions, and expulsions. Reprimands, isolation, and restraint. We stop using them altogether. Now, to some people, this is terrifying. But you have to remember that those things, they're not getting you what you want. They're only making your situation worse. They're making your school less safe. They're making your teachers more stressed. And they're making your school a worse place to be. Step two is to change your mindset. So we have to admit that we've been lied to our whole lives, that doing bad things makes people shape up. Once you get past that, you begin to see the world in a very, very different way. And you begin to see that what we say in restorative justice, that every crisis comes with an opportunity. And we begin to look at schools as a rehabilitative and restorative place instead of a punitive one. Step three is acquire new ideas, new strategies. So these are some things that we're using now at the foundation with schools around the country and around the world. So we're using victim offender mediation, mindfulness training, ACT, it's acceptance and commitment therapy with one-on-one and group settings. We're using critical incident stress management, or managing, as I say there, the behavior change stairway model, and the discipline resource curriculum I told you about a little while ago. And then once you get these new strategies, leaders, you've got to give your staff flexibility to try these things out, and give everybody grace and patience as they learn these new things. And once you endure, once you get past that learning curve, you'll see how much more powerful and effective and how much better your school life is in the long term. So I've talked a lot about ACT today. So this is just a quick video where we talk about what ACT is. So I'm going to roll this here real quick. There, I'm glad it freezes on that last thing there. You know, in schools, we've only begun to see the power of ACT. But I cannot stress the benefits. I could sit here and go on all day long. But ACT is very powerful. I've really never seen anything like it. When we pair it with restorative justice, here's a video quickly explaining restorative practices. So I'm going to roll this real quick, and then I'm going to talk about both these together. Okay, so restorative justice is about repairing the harm that was done. So, excuse me. So we want to repair the harm that was done, and we want to teach people to be flexible in their thoughts. And when we do those two things, the results are dramatic and powerful. So there's some false beliefs out there about restorative practices. One is that there's no accountability. This is simply an ignorant argument made by ignorant people, because the opposite is true. Like I said just a little while ago, let's say I'm a kid and I want to I'm mad at my friend, I want to punch him at school. If I'm in the typical punitive system, I go, okay, if I punch him in the face, I'm gonna get kicked out of school for 3 days. So I can endure that. So I punch him in the face. And then I come back to school, nobody ever questions me, and the conflict just continues. But when I go to mediation on my own terms and come up with a solution with the other person, I'm more likely to follow it, and the problem gets resolved. So I just saw on that slide, that's not a joke. Our mediations are 85 to 87% effective on the average once people get up and running. People think it's wishy-washy because they're not screaming at kids. Well, that screaming doesn't do any good. You're only wasting valuable time in schools. Some adults feel that it gives away power, and that's true. It does give away power. They're right about that. But my answer to that is that you never had that power anyways. You had an illusion of power. There's more of them than there is of you. So, and then some people say that the evidence base is not there. There is some merit to that, and I'll tackle that here during the Q&A. So what does the current research tell us? The acceptance and commitment therapy, that teaching people how to manage their thoughts along with restorative practice appear to complement one another. But at this time, we don't know which one is more influential. So does teaching someone how to do mediations make them more cognitively flexible, or is teaching them cognitive flexibility make them a better mediator? Could be a little bit of both. And we also have learned over the last 5 or so years, 5 to 10 years, that restorative justice has been documented to cause neurogenesis, which means the regrowing of brain cells. And it pictured the amygdala, which is responsible for empathy. So we can literally teach people to be more empathic by using restorative practices. And the incorporation of ACT principles into the traditional FBA process has shown early promise. And we're starting to see quicker behavior changes. So when we're taking the thoughts into account as well as the outer behaviors and treating both of those together, we get better results quicker. But again, this is very early, and there's a lot more research that needs to be done on this. The other big illusion is that I hear administrators across the country tell me that my teachers can't do this. So why do I picture Barack Obama? What's his famous saying? Yes, we can. So yes, they can. They can do it. And you can lead them in doing it. We've done this before. We've done it in many places, even highly resistant places. And we can coach you on how to do it. In fact, before I go on to the next thing, right now we are one of the only organized restorative justice companies in the world that has training for administrators of how to get your staff through that process of the pain of letting go of the past and working towards the future. So tonight I'm appealing to you because one person cannot do this alone. I'm putting a team together. So I'm looking for people to join us in this fight. So this is the last video, I promise. Here we go. right, so we need to tune in here in just a second. So, but I just want to just emphasize here that these prices are available for today only. Today is the last day. They're going to go out, so take advantage of it. Come and join us. And some people might say, why are we offering this at such a low price? They're saying, Darren, you're not going to make any money off this, and you're right. I'm not. Not at least not today. But that's not. It's not about money right now. It's about getting people ready, because I'm going to need some help with schools across the country and across the world. Okay, so we're going to take a break here for just a second, and we're going to see what questions people have got for me.